Now, carrying on the tip of applying to Harvard, what were some things that you think stood out most in your application? So if an admissions officer was looking at you, a Warren Zhu who's applying to Harvard, what are the things on that admissions that you think would stand out the most?
Oh no, I actually looked at my admissions file, so
Hmm.
I do know the answer. They were just very impressed by my philosophy ability.
Mm.
It was just like all over the admissions file. It was one philosophy. Second, I didn't seem like I was just a complete academic nerd.
Mm.
I did sports teams. I was involved in student government. I did music. I did drama. Blah 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 blah. I did artist clubs. Blah, blah. And then that was the second part. Third part, I think I had pretty good recommendations. I had a really good relationship with my teacher.
Hmm.
And the fourth part was I had a very good interview. In terms of like how to, then maybe like in terms of interview preparation, I guess I did quite a lot. I would like just walk around my apartment and just talk, like learn to talk about myself articulately and well. Um, and those were probably the four components. So academic excellence in one subject, plus sort of not only being academically excellent, but actively involved in like all other areas of life,
Mm.
plus sort of good relationship with teachers,
Mm.
and then at last, sort of a good interview.
Hello and welcome to this interview on Logos Education. Today we're joined by Harvard student Warren Zhu to talk about what it is like to study at Harvard, how you could get into Harvard, and more information. So if you want to learn everything about getting into Harvard and want to know what it is like to study math at Harvard, then well, this is the interview for you. Hello Warren Zhu, and how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Alright, so just to get started off, let us start with the broadest question and say, what is a day in the life like as a Harvard student?
So we wake up at around 10:20, and then normally lecture is 10:30. So you wake up, you sort of like hastily get dressed, run across Harvard Yard, and then get to lecture at around 10:35. I normally probably go to the toilet, take a morning poo. On a poo, I normally revise my lecture material to prepare for the next for the lecture I'm about to be late in, and then I study until 12 o'clock.
Mhm.
Or so, and I grab lunch. Normally we find someone to grab lunch with. So I like text a friend like, do you want to grab lunch? I'm gonna grab lunch. I study from maybe like 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and again text a friend to like, do you want to grab dinner? And grab dinner. After grab dinner, study until like 2-3 a.m. and then you sleep.
Mm.
It's pretty monastic lifestyle.
Yes, it is quite surprising, I suppose. I mean, the time zone seems to be a 3 a.m. to us. Well, it seems to be a 10 a.m. to a 3 a.m. day, which is kind of a bit of a shift. Perhaps
Yeah.
how important do you think lectures are at Harvard? Do you think you need lectures, or do you really not need to attend them?
Okay, for humanities classes, you
Mhm.
have to attend the lectures. That's probably why I stopped going to taking humanities classes. And for STEM classes, I think it's like extraordinarily liberal. I highly recommend STEM students going to sort of American schools. I think like you can skip all your lectures, but if you want to go, you can. There are a ton of office hours, what we call sections, which is like
Mhm.
smaller supervision stuff. And it's just like a wonderful place with a lot of freedom and I don't know, just freedom for you to grow as a person.
You talk a bit about freedom and how STEM is better. Would you say it's better in the US than the UK? Would that be something you observe, or is it more a typically Harvard experience? What would you say it
For
is?
STEM.
Yeah.
I'm unsure because I only know about
Mm.
Harvard. But I can talk about it myself,
Yes.
studying math. I find everything to be very well organized.
Mhm.
Whilst at the same time extremely free, which is an unlikely combination. And what's organized about it is you have weekly problem sets to do. We call them P sets.
Mhm.
And outside of weekly problem sets, we normally have a final exam. It's always take home, which is wonderful. So you just take sort of 7 questions back, you work on it for 20, 30 hours and just hand it in. And outside of that, there are office hours sprinkled throughout the week. For example, for one of my classes, there's an office hours every day. So I can just go and ask any questions I have. It's a wonderful place to work.
Mm.
And I don't have to attend any of the lectures if I don't want to. All the lectures are recorded. Although I normally personally attend to the ones that I like. And outside of that, there's one class, for example, I'm taking an algorithms class called CS 124.
Mhm.
I didn't go to a single lecture in the entire semester, nor did I go to a single section.
Mhm.
I just like read the lecture notes and did the homework, and
Mm.
I'm fine. So it's a very freeing place, and I think the best thing about the place, it would sound very sort of dystopian from how I'm describing it, maybe, is that there's a bunch of other people who are doing sort of the same thing as you, who love what they're doing, and you just like constantly piece set with them, piece setting meaning problem setting with them, and work with them and have fun with them. I think it's a beautiful environment. It's magical.
So one thing which I've noticed at Oxford is the idea that, well, depending on your tutors, but the lectures is very formatted. The exams have a great significance on it. If you miss them or whatnot, you have to redo. And there's a lot of things to do with your problem sets, the scheduling, and kind of the tempo and the time frame of things. I was wondering, in Harvard, do you feel a similar type of pressure on your exams, your P sets, or do you think the time schedule is a bit more liberal and looser?
In fact, I think like from what I've heard, um, American schools have generally like much higher pressure than British schools, in the sense of although you have like weekly essays, etc., they don't quite count for grade. Whereas for us, it's weekly P sets. Every piece that counts for the grade, normally more than 50% of it, and then you have maybe a midterm and a final exam, which count for another 50% of the grade. And the funniest thing is, there are some classes that have midterms, we call it, and the midterms go on. So it's not like you have one midterm and one final, but some courses have like 4 or 5 midterms. Remember, we had one course which had a midterm on the last day of school, and a final afterwards. And I think it's very not like examination focused, but more it keeps you in check. There's a lot of checkpoints that you have to hit compared to maybe in UK schools where you just take a final and that's it.
What would you say are some of the best courses you've taken so far? I mean, I know in the UK, when we're talking, I'm reading philosophy and theology, I'm legitimately only reading philosophy and theology. However, from talking to you over the last few days, it seems like you've done some Russian literature and whatnot, even though you're technically majoring in math or whatever you're calling it. So what are some of the favorite courses that you've studied so far?
Well, I guess one wonderful thing, just not talking about specific courses, but about sort of the whole system in general, is that I think it's a wonderful opportunity for you to like do things that you love, because you can choose all the courses that you do, compared to maybe in the UK where there are much more required courses. There's just like such a great array of beautiful courses that one can choose at Harvard that it's like miraculous when you look at the course catalog and it's like this thick and you can like basically choose any of the courses there, as long as like if you have the will to do so, right? And in terms of the concrete courses I'm taking, I took a film class. We made some films. I think I was actually quite bad at making films. I fancy myself to be very good. But what it gave me was, now when I'm in a situation, I just like look at things. I can just like picture this thing being like on film in this like square camera like setting, and with all their formal symmetries aligned together. Now that was very interesting.
Did you come across that film class because someone recommended it to you, or was it more so just you looked at the list and it seemed quite nice?
Well, I looked at the list, and also I just searched online. A lot of people recommend taking what we call the Art, Film, and Visual Studies department's class. So I was like, well, I'll take one. Because, well, life is about exploring new things, right? And also I was very into Wong Kar-wai's films. So I thought I should make a film. I realized that I wouldn't be a good filmmaker, but I think it brought like super valuable experience.
Yes. I suppose since most of us, even though our Logos education does try to help people get into the dream university, to say that everyone's going to get a chance to study at Harvard would be a bit much, I think, for anyone to claim. And if anyone says we're going to help you get into Harvard and you will get into Harvard, that's a bit of a scam, I would say. But perhaps what I want to ask you is, well, what are the things which stand out from your Harvard experience? What do you think about being in Harvard that make you want to think, well, this is the reason why I've applied and I've actually really enjoyed this aspect of the Harvard experience? What are some of the things which stand out to you?
I think there are maybe 2 parts of it, and they're kind of linked. One is, I feel like what's Harvard, of course, like it's good in like every aspect, but I think what really excels, what Harvard excels in, is sort of this training in one's like social aptitude, in not like the ability of having deep conversations per se, the ability to go into new situations and feeling comfortable in there, seeing new people that you won't necessarily like have any common topics in, or would not want to be friends with at all, but still the ability to make a pleasant conversation with them anyways. And I think there's like plenty of opportunities to do this. First, just from like all the events that go on, the clubs, but I think especially we have this first year dining hall called Annenberg. And what you do is like all the first years go to eat in this one big hall, beautifully gorgeous, like a cathedral. And you just meet random people there. And it really forces you to, I think, develop a kind of like social bravery and comfortableness to whatever situation it brings you. And people, there's a lot of socials that people go to, which is like slightly different from parties where you like talk to people. And all of these other things, I think, makes the Harvard experience unique. And this leads to maybe the second thing, which is, I think I've seen certain people, which I just feel like extraordinarily inspired by. And I've been thinking like, oh, maybe they're what we really think about when we think about Harvard. It's like the Harvard of Harvard, let's say. And what these people are, I think, first, they're extraordinarily articulate. They're very good at the humanities. They're very well read. But at the same time, they're also extremely good at STEM and quantitative skills. And they do like extremely hard classes in the quantitative side too. At the same time, they don't want to just settle for something like investment banking or consulting, which I think more than 50% of Harvard students end going after they graduate. And they want to do something maybe more interesting or important to the world. And so it's this like love for the world and simultaneous excellence in both the humanities and STEM that I feel like is sort of the ideal that, let's say, Harvard maybe like shapes you towards. And I met and related to this like wonderful conversationalists at Harvard. Some of the best that I've ever met. And I think it is this kind of like breadth of training that it really fosters, maybe compared to other universities and institutions. Breadth of training, but also like technical like skill and like ability to do things in the real world all together mixed into one.
I think that's one of the benefits of being at any top university is it's almost less so about the actual concrete things you learn in the course, but more so about the people you meet and the type of people you surround yourself with. Because if you're thinking about perhaps studying, I think Jordan Peterson said that once. He said, well, all right, if you really wanted to learn about Berdyaev, you don't really need to be at Oxford to study Berdyaev. You could be at home and just read Berdyaev books from the local library. But at the same time, if you're staying at home, you don't get to meet all these top minds. So as a result, part of the reason of being at a good university is to meet those top minds. And of course, I'm not going to say every single person in those universities are top minds, but the chance of you meeting top minds there is really way higher than anywhere else in that sense. Networking connection in that sense is very, and I would say super valuable, especially something which is, I think we both share, is that we've met some really amazing people in Oxford, me in Oxford, you at Harvard as well. It's meeting those people, being in community with them is a very good thing fundamentally. And I suppose when it comes to you saying you're being comfortable, do you think that's more about being comfortable in your own skin or just being comfortable in general? Like, what do you mean by being more comfortable?
No, I think it's like I wasn't saying anything sort of more metaphysical when I said being comfortable. I just meant that when you've met so many new people, I think probably it seems to me like people at Oxford actually meet maybe like less, like, yes. Like new faces. At Harvard, maybe I've introduced myself like 1,000 times. And when you just like done it so much, I think it's pretty much just a skill of going to a situation, meeting new people and just saying hi and like being comfortable, just like being who you are and interacting with like someone new. It's nothing complicated, but I think there's like so much opportunity for you to do that at Harvard. I think it's like more than maybe most other institutions, even amongst ones that have like very high, let's say, ranking that sets it apart.
Okay, now that we've talked a bit about what life is like at Harvard, let's turn a bit more to thinking about what brought you to Harvard. So if you've been watching this channel for a while and watched our reactions to our applications, you've seen that we've gotten into some wonderful universities. Most notably, of course, Columbia and Cambridge. Perhaps firstly, I'll talk about the UK. What made you decide to choose the US over the UK? And perhaps that's a broader question. And then later on, we can develop into what made you choose Harvard over Cambridge specifically.
I think geopolitically, the US is a center. The UK, of course, important is still peripheral compared to the US. So I think if you want to stay in a place, you will probably want to go to the US. I think probably, let's say, there's a higher concentration of the brightest people in the United States compared to anywhere else in the world. That's why I prioritize going to the U.S. than the U.K. And specifically why Harvard over Cambridge. Of course, I think okay, Harvard is probably more prestigious, but also I think I have much more freedom there, to do whatever, like to learn and study whatever I wanted. Like I applied as a philosophy major, and I changed into math. It was not a complicated process. There was nothing that I had to do. I just had to take these courses and love the thing, and I can just like learn it. I don't think there's as much of those opportunities in Cambridge.
So perhaps developing on that, why Harvard over Columbia then? Because you've talked about why the UK potentially over the US, but why Harvard over Columbia?
I think Harvard is just a better version of Columbia.
Yes.
Except for maybe New York City.
Is that something you feel draws you back at Harvard, not being in a big city? Does it ever cross your mind, like, I wish I was in New York, I wish I was in something like London or whatnot? Does that ever cross your mind?
Oh, no, not at all. There's way too many things to do at Harvard. When I'm slightly bored about Harvard, about like everything around Harvard, I just go to MIT. And there's almost such an abundance of activities that you really forget about the outside world for 15 weeks until you realize that school has ended. So I don't think not being at a big city is any drawback. But at the same time, I know friends who wish that they were in a bigger city. I think the reason maybe I personally was not like sad about it is that I grew up in a big city my entire life, so I don't really crave that lifestyle.
Yes, I mean that's something I feel as well coming to Oxford. Like some people do want to go into London a lot. I personally don't have that desire to. Of course, I do go to London a lot, but I go in there to watch football and not really to be in a big city. I really enjoy it here. But when you're saying there's a lot to do in Harvard, are you talking about there's a lot to do as a university, in the university, or there's a lot to do in Cambridge? Like, what do you view as the purpose? Well, what do you view the main activities are? Are they run by the university, like maybe sports or clubs or whatnot, or are you then, or are you then talking about there's actually a lot to do in the city of Cambridge?
Well, I think mainly at Harvard University. Like, frankly, I have to be honest. I actually don't know Cambridge or Boston very well because I just stay in Harvard most of the time. There's just so many events going on, so many people to meet that you don't quite have to go out of this bubble. And I like maybe it's not even bad that I don't have to go out of this bubble because I'm out of it during the holidays.
Is it important, do you think, for people to get to know the city? But I mean, from what I hear from you, you don't really need to go to Cambridge that much. Do you think there's...
Well, we are in Cambridge, technically. It's just that, like, there are different parts of Cambridge.
But I mean, like, going into the town, is it very important to go into the town, or is it, like... Or is it really you could just live entirely in Harvard and kind of be a monk of Harvard, perhaps, and no need to venture into the town? What do you think?
There's no pressure to venture into the town. Yes. In terms of the importance, I think... I don't have a strong opinion on this. It really depends on how you want to live. I personally just think that there are like such great opportunities just right at Harvard, right at MIT, that you don't really have to go far.
How would you say is a transport to Harvard? I suppose if you're flying into Harvard or getting into university, are there direct flights to Boston for some people who might be thinking, I can't travel from overseas? Is it a big airport? And also, is it easy to get from the airport to Harvard?
Well, I just Uber, but... you can just take the train. The Boston train system is the oldest in America. It's frankly not really good, but it's bearable. And I don't know, it's just like every other big city. Boston is, I think, the 11th biggest city in the U.S. or something. It's not horribly like poor or like destitute. It's a beautiful place.
Would you say, what were some of the reasons which, and I suppose we're now talking a bit more about your individual course, why did you start off applying as a philosophy major?
Oh, mainly because I liked philosophy. I was good at it. All my activities that I did in high school pointed me towards a philosophy major. It was the best narrative that I could craft about who I am. I still really love philosophy. I just found that math to be much more fun, at least in the university context, than philosophy. And I like perhaps the people who studied math, not like them more, let's say, but I found them more to my, like energy and taste, than maybe people who did the humanities. And also, I think math is probably the purest place at like Harvard. I think it is a place where you like see the most magical people.
Do you think that choosing philosophy and then switching to math was, I mean, you talked a bit about how it wasn't very difficult, but do you think that is something people should think about when they're going to university, or especially applying to the US? Because I assume a lot of people who are applying to the US might still not be very decided about their major. Do you think they should just pick whatever major fits their narrative the best, get there, and then just change on a whim, or at least change when they get there? Do you think that's something they should think about, or do you think they should really think very hard about what do I want to do and then write or try to develop a personality around that?
I think you should think very hard about what you do and develop personality around that. It's not necessarily what you want to actually do. Because people change, and I think people should have and can have and should have multiple personalities at the same time that you're like both adept at. It's like coming over here, I can talk with theology students and just like have fun talking about Dostoevsky and Russian films. At the same time, back at home, I can be talking about like algorithms and making all these math metaphors about everyday life, and it's still fun too. I don't think it's like completely contradictory, but I think if you want to think about like college admissions, it is good to have some of a coherent narrative for admissions officers to just know like, oh yeah, this person is this. I can imagine him being in our community in this way, X, Y, and Z way.
Perhaps you've raised college admissions a bit. What would be some of your biggest tips to apply for Harvard? Because I'm sure a lot of people watching right now would be interested in getting into a Harvard as a university. So what would be some tips which have helped you get into Harvard?
I honestly don't know what to say. Be good at things. I think probably you want to get very good at something. And also you don't want to be bad at everything else. Yeah. You want to be good at everything and then very good at something.
Yes.
And at the same time also have very good recommendations. And just do everything right.
Yeah.
It's really hard for me to say like any advice when it comes to college admissions.
Yes. And on the tip of advice for college admissions, if you want to go check out a recent book that we've published on UK applications, go check out the UCAS Bible. You can find that in the link below. Also, if you do want more free information to stay updated with all the latest tips and tricks about getting to your dream universities, go check out our newsletter. The link will be in the description below as well. So make sure you go access the free resources that we provide at Logos Education. Now, carrying on the tip of applying to Harvard, what were some things that you think stood out most in your application? So if an admissions officer was looking at you, a Warren Zhu who's applying to Harvard, what are the things on that admissions that you think would stand out the most?
Oh no, I actually looked at my admissions file, so I do know the answer. They were just very impressed by my philosophy ability. It was just like all over the admissions file. It was one, philosophy. Second, I didn't seem like I was just a complete academic nerd. I did sports teams. I was involved in student government. I did music. I did drama. Blah 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 blah. I did artist clubs. Blah, blah. And then that was the second part. Third part, I think I had pretty good recommendations. I had a really good relationship with my teacher. And the fourth part was I had a very good interview. In terms of like how to, then maybe like in terms of interview preparation, I guess I did do quite a lot. I would like just walk around my apartment and just talk, like learn to talk about myself articulately and well. And those were probably the four components. So academic excellence in one subject, plus sort of not only being academically excellent, but actively involved in like all other areas of life, plus sort of good relationship with teachers, and then at last, sort of a good interview.
If you had to go back to your high school self, would there be anything that you would have done differently? Or I mean, I suppose the same goes for your application. Is there anything you would have done differently? And if so, what are those things?
My high school self. I was relatively content in high school. What I would have done differently? I honestly wouldn't have done much differently. I don't think I personally made much mistakes in high school. I maybe made mistakes
in university.
No, not in university either. I think my university experience has been very good. I think I made a mistake in middle school. Yeah. Sorry, is it tissue?
No worries. Yes. The tissue is here, but I'm just asking that because I think I agree with your sentiment that there's nothing much you would want to do differently. Just because for me, I would also say my experience in high school is generally quite.
I got into Harvard.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard for me. It's hard for me to say what I did wrong.
Yeah, but do you think there's anything that you could have improved upon? Like, is there anything in your application do you think could be better, or do you think with the seal of Harvard, that's kind of it, and that's kind of how it is?
in terms of what I could have done
Yeah.
better with my own
Yeah.
application.
Is there anything you would have improved?
Maybe I should have applied for head boy.
Yeah. And that's a funny thing. Both of us did not want to get head boy, and we were both 2 of the 3 people who got interviewed for head boy.
Yeah,
It's quite funny.
I applied for nutrition prefect because I thought it was an easy job.
Yes.
And they ended up giving me deputy head boy for some reason.
Yes.
Yeah, that's only one. But I think the general advice is, don't waste your time. But at the same time, don't do too many things that are only for college applications.
Yes.
Do some things for college applications. Like for example, like do some SAT questions, right?
Yes.
Well, there is one. Maybe like I should be more careful in my SAT. Should have been more careful in my SAT. I did not fill in the wrong bubbles.
Yes.
It was extraordinarily stressful because I got 790 for English, but 730 for math.
Yes.
Because I just like filled in the wrong bubbles. And if I did not, I wouldn't have to take the ACT, which was a pain in the ass.
Which did you like more, ACT or SAT?
I thought SAT was really easy, so I liked the SAT more.
Yes. I don't know, why did you do the ACT then?
Oh, because I couldn't register for a second SAT.
You can't?
There was no spots left because of COVID, yeah.
Yeah, so that's unfortunate.
Yeah, well, I did manage to get a 35 in the ACT after some practice.
Yes.
And it was a long story, but I got actually 34.5, so it then got bumped up to 35.
That's nice.
I was very lucky.
So perhaps to end off this interview, there's 2 questions to ask you. Number 1, to summarize everything you've said, what is something you would say to someone who's thinking about applying to Harvard? What would you say to them?
Don't stake this as a part of your identity. Whilst at the same time, it depends on what year they're in. I think if they're just the beginning of high school, I think don't think too much about college applications per se, but think about who you are and what you're good at, and try to develop those parts of yourself as fully as possible, and then start thinking about how to let other people know that you have developed those parts of yourself as fully as possible. Make a good relationship with your teachers. Take use of the resources in your school. We didn't really do things outside of school, but I just like went to all the clubs. I did music. I did drama. I was in choir for 10 years. I still haven't really improved my singing skills. And take use of all the resources in your school before you think about sort of like things outside. I think that's really important.
Now, perhaps to a student who's been admitted to Harvard and is thinking about, well, I'm going to this really big university, what are some things you would tell them?
I'm somewhat unsure because it is so particular to each person. At the same time, I think what one can say is it's not following your heart, but there will be a lot of opportunities at this place, and a lot of ways for you to do things that maybe don't quite align with your own principles or with what you want to do, but everyone else are doing it. And so I would recommend at the beginning, spend some time to explore as many things as possible, and then learn that you don't have to do everything, and no one cares that you do everything, and end up just doing a few things well, and doing those things that you love and is truly passionate about and want to spend the rest of your life doing, and the other things, just let other people worry about them.
That seems like a wonderful place to end off this video. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have any other questions or any other people at universities or any university that you want to learn more about, let me know in the comments below. Also, if you have any other questions for Warren or myself, then let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, my friends. Of course, if you want to check out our UCAS Bible, then go check out it. The link to that in the description below is there alongside our free newsletter and more free resources. So make sure you check that in the link below. And I know I'm saying check out the link below a lot, but that's because I put a lot of information for you to help you get into your dream universities there. Stay safe, my friends. See you soon. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next one. Goodbye, and I'll see you soon.